Good morning and welcome to Sunday School. Before I begin today's lesson, I have a question. If I want to know about God, where do I look? In the Bible. The Bible tells me I can look at what God made and I can figure out there is a God. I can figure out He's big and strong, but that is all I can know from looking at creation. If I want to know if God loves me or what sin is, or especially how to get to heaven, I have to look in the Bible. Well, we are to Matthew chapter 8 today, so quick review of where we left off. Last week, Jesus had been on a mountain and had preached what we call the Sermon on the Mount. And he had spent the entire day teaching the disciples what it looked like to love God and follow God with their whole hearts. And all those who'd listened had been shocked. Not only had Jesus shown he had more authority than Moses, he also had shown that although the people had spent their whole lives trying to obey the letter of the law of Moses, they had not followed it with their hearts. And so I'm sure most of the people in that crowd that day had walked away with a bit to reflect on, as we did, finishing that section. And Matthew chapter 8 picks up exactly where that lesson leaves off. So again, Matthew is written by one of the 12 disciples, and he's writing primarily to people who were raised Jewish. So let's have our ears ready to listen. We'll start in verse 1. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him, and a man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean." And Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man and said, "I am willing. Be clean." Immediately he was cured of his leprosy. And then Jesus said to him, "See to it that you don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them." When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed and in terrible suffering." And Jesus said to him, "I'll go and heal him." The centurion replied, "Lord, I don't deserve to have you come under my roof, but say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." And when Jesus heard this, he was astonished and said to those following him, "I tell you the truth, I haven't found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, it will be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that very hour. Now let's go back through these two miracles and see what we can learn from both of them. So we started off, Jesus is leaving the mountain where he has done teaching all day. The crowds are starting to disperse, but there is someone on the outside of the crowd, a man with leprosy. Now, of all the diseases you could have in the ancient world, leprosy is one that people feared the most. It is very contagious and it does horrible things. It's a skin disease and it eats away at your fingers, your toes, your nose, your ears. It's terrible. And so if someone got leprosy, they had to stay away from everyone. And if they went out of where they were living, they had to shout to the people around them, unclean, unclean, so that no one would come near them and accidentally get leprosy too. So the crowds are around, but it's no surprise that Jesus gets to have, as we can see, a very private conversation with this leper because nobody wants to get close to him. So he comes, kneels in front of Jesus, and says, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And Jesus says, I am willing, and then he does the unthinkable to a Jew. How did Jesus heal the leper? Did he just say, you're clean? What did it say? It said Jesus reached out his hand and touched him. Now remember, this man is, according to the law of Moses, unclean. And if you touched an unclean thing, according to the law of Moses, then the person who did the touching was unclean too. But does the leprosy come onto Jesus? Does he become unclean? He doesn't. And Jesus does another amazing thing. So he heals this man of his leprosy. But what does he tell the man to do? Just go home? No, he says you need to go to the temple, to the priests, and offer the sacrifices according to the law of Moses for being cured from leprosy. And there is a section in the law of Moses where there are sacrifices that someone would do if they were cured. Probably the priests didn't have that section memorized. There were very, very few times in the entire history of the Old Testament where a leper had been cured. It had happened, but it was not often. So when this man went to the temple in Jerusalem and told the priest he had been cured of leprosy, this would have caused a huge stir amongst the priesthood. And so Jesus, again, in his love, he heals the leper, but Jesus is also sending a message to the priests in Jerusalem. Hey, you guys need to pay attention. There's something going on that you need to be looking into because Jesus can heal leprosy. They needed to be coming and hearing Jesus and checking him out for themselves to see, is this the Messiah? So then Jesus goes back to Capernaum. Now Capernaum is a very small village by the Sea of Galilee. And as he's headed into town, he's met by a Roman centurion. Now remember, in these days, Israel, the people of Israel are living in the land of Israel, but they are not their own boss. The Roman Empire had taken over this land and was in charge. And a centurion was a soldier in charge of 100 other soldiers. So this is a very well-known man, but to the Jews, he would also be a very hated man because he is a Roman soldier. He's the sign of everything what they thought was wrong in their country, that they were being run by foreigners. And yet this Roman centurion comes to Jesus with a request. He has a servant who's suffering. Now what do you learn about this Roman just from the beginning? Do most people who have 100 soldiers who report to them, let alone servants, care that much about their servants? Most of them don't. You know, it's not like he's coming for his child or his wife. He's coming for a servant. But this man has incredible faith. Even though he's an occupier of Israel, obviously he has had enough exposure to the God of Israel to realize there is something different about the God of Israel than there is from the gods of Rome. The God of Israel might care. And when he hears about Jesus and what Jesus is doing and teaching, he comes and he asks. And his response when Jesus says, I'll go, no problem, I'll go heal your servant, is even more astonishing. It even surprised Jesus. What did he say? He said, no, you don't have to come. All you have to do is speak the word and my servant will be healed. So Jesus doesn't even go, does he? So did Jesus have to touch the man like he did with the leper? No, this miracle is totally different. With the leper, Jesus touched him. With this man, all Jesus does is speak the word, and the man is healed. And again, the centurion has now had a experience with Messiah. And I have a feeling this isn't the last time the centurion is going to want to interact with Jesus. How about you? You think he's going to be interested in learning more about who is this man? I bet he will. So thank you for listening to today's lesson. I hope seeing Jesus interact with these people has helped you to love him more. And I look forward to answering any questions you have.